Grabe Alampay, the big stories tonight. As Metro Manila's GCQ quarantine classification expires on Sunday, some mayors are expressing readiness to transition to MGCQ. But the health department says that is not likely to happen next month. Instead of their arrival date, all inbound passengers to the Philippines, regardless of origin, will now be tested for COVID-19 5 days after arrival. A birthday bash in Baguio is now controversial after quarantine protocols were breached. Included in the violators, the wife of Baguio City Mayor and contact tracing czar, Benjie Magalong. Two new strains of the African swine fever in China are giving meat producers more reason to push back against plans for a zero tariff on pork imports. The Agriculture Department has earmarked 80 million pesos to purchase ASF test kits. And a new medical legal report reinforces that flight attendant Dacera died of natural causes. It shows that she had an undiagnosed hypertension leading to a ruptured aortic aneurysm. Let's start with some Metro Manila mayors saying they are ready for the easing of quarantine restrictions by next month. But is the IATF even considering such a move? Let's find out in this report by Jenny Dongon.
Metro Manila's GCQ status is supposed to expire on Sunday. Should quarantine in the capital be eased to modify general community quarantine, Taguig City says it's more than ready. This is because, according to Mayor Lino Cayetano, the city is doing enough testing and it has enough quarantine facilities. But he says it all depends on how the rest of NCR mayors will vote.
Ang katotohanan, mismong mga kababayan ko may nagtatrabaho sa labas ng Taguig at maraming mga nasa labas ng Taguig nagtatrabaho sa Metro Manila. And the truth is, it's not confined to Taguig or Metro Manila alone.
MMDA General Manager Jojo Garcia says some Metro Manila mayors are open to the transition, but the focus for now is on vaccines.
Nandito na yung vaccines natin, no? Malapit na. Ayaw naman natin magkaroon ng surge at tapos nag-aasikaso tayo ng vaccine. Napakahirap yan. So sabi ko nga sa ngayon, maganda yung numero. If they're going to make it a status quo, meaning GCQ sa Fil, welcome sa amin yan. Kung i-open ng konti, gagawing MGCQ, okay din yan. No, sa mga mayors na.
But for the business sector, now is the right time to ease classifications as long as protocol are strictly followed. Philippine Chamber of Commerce President George Barcelon says they don't want the country's economy to be on another COVID coma.
This would inject more economy. So I'm all for it. So yung mga sa private sector, talaga naman we're very strict also in following the protocol.
Businesses are confident that with the testing and tracing capacity of both the national and local governments, Metro Manila can prevent the further spread of COVID-19.
Ito mga testing, to be honest, I'm hoping that there will be a move towards that direction. I'd like to repeat, para mawala yung takot natin. Mahirap yung we're naging paralyzed tayo sa takot natin sa COVID, and then we're not moving, and the economy will die.
But Health Secretary Francisco Duque confirms the national recommendation of the Interagency Task Force for the quarantine classification in Metro Manila.
Secretary, hindi nyo nabanggit po ni Mayor Lino na until February, yung decision for GCQ until end of February. Is this the final recommendation of the IATF?
Well, for NCR, this is the final recommendation beginning February 1 to the 28th.
President Duterte is expected to announce the new community quarantine status to be implemented in parts of the country by month end. For News 5, Jenny Dongon, We Are One News.
Up north in Baguio City, a birthday celebration got the public's attention for all the wrong reasons, the breaching of quarantine protocols. Two of the attendees include contact tracing czar Benjie Magalong and his wife, who was pictured without a mask. Romel Lopez has the details.
With several guests present, events host Team Yap held his birthday party on January 17th at the Manor at Camp John Hay in Baguio City. The media savvy that he is, he even documented on his Instagram how he and his guests passed all necessary documents to enter the City of Pines, until pictures and videos circulated online depicting how protocols were violated during the party. Among those photographed without mask, the wife of Baguio City Mayor and contact tracing czar Benjie Magalong. The couple were guests in Yap's celebration.
Hindi ka naman perfect na tao. Baka kalimutan mo may magpa-picture sa'yo, baka kalimutan mo yung mask mo, di ba? So, ganun ang nangyari doon, ano? And siguro, na-star track siya kay Casey Concepcion, nakalimutan niya isuot yung mask niya. Nung nagpa-picture kami. Pero ako, every time talagang conscious ako na susot ko talaga yung...
Guests were also snapped online for joining a cultural performance, with critics pointing that it's culturally insensitive. Add to that, a number of them were not wearing masks, something that Magalong defended.
Part of our tradition is, after a show, the cultural dancers goes down, they approach the guest, and then they invite them. Siguro, dahil sa excitement, yung mga kumakain, nakalimutan nilang isuot yung kanilang mask.
Magalong does admit, however, that violations were indeed committed. Officials are now identifying the violators. Magalong says even his wife will not be spared from penalties.
Sabi ko sa kanya, you'll be fine. Sorry, you'll be fine. Nakalimutan mo man hindi. Ganyan eh. Leadership by example eh. The mayor fining his wife.
The Regional Tourism Department is conducting its own probe. It has already issued a notice to the hotel. The LGU also wants an explanation from the hotel venue within 72 hours.
It's about time that you have to be directly observant of the compliance of your guests on the minimum public health standard.
Health protocols are supposedly strictly implemented in Baguio, especially with neighboring Bontoc already having the British variant of COVID-19. From February 1 until February 15, temporary restricted access will be implemented in Baguio, La Trinidad, Itogon, Sablan, Tuba, and Tubay or Blist. Inter-Blist travelers must present medical documents for work or essential travel. Residents who need to enter Baguio for medical appointment need to show proof of their confirmed appointments. Those with medical emergencies and essential service providers will be allowed to pass freely. Non-resident travelers must have travel permit and medical certificate from their place of origin. For News 5, Romy Lopez. We are One News.
Passengers allowed to enter the Philippines will now be swabbed on the 5th day after their arrival in the country unless they exhibit COVID-19 symptoms prior to their test date. This means all arriving passengers, regardless of their origin, will be required to undergo facility-based quarantine upon arrival. They will then be tested after 5 days. If negative, they will be endorsed to their respective LGUs to continue the remainder of their 14-day quarantine. This will take effect starting February 1. The new protocol comes as government beefs up measures following more cases of the new COVID-19 variant in the country. Czech Republic has also been added to the list of countries with travel restrictions. Starting tomorrow, foreign passengers coming from or have been to Czech Republic within 2 weeks prior to arrival will not be allowed entry. This brings the country's travel ban list to 36 countries. The restrictions will be in effect until January 31 on Sunday. Let's take a look at the big stories on print and online. The gross domestic products collapse in the third quarter last year was slightly softer than originally estimated. That's according to the Philippine Star. The Philippine Statistics Authority revised upward its report of 11.5% contraction to 11.4%. The latest figure takes into account a larger set of data, including those from the property and education sectors. Cavite has canceled Macro Asia's $10 billion Sangli Airport project. The Business World is quoting Governor John Vic Remulla saying that the company and its partner, China Communications Construction, had deficient requirements in 3 of 4 items. The Cavite LGU says it would start new negotiations with the private sector soon. And from News 5, President Rodrigo Duterte has named Lieutenant General Cirilite Sobejana as the next Armed Forces Chief of Staff. Sobejana carries the Medal of Valor, the military's highest combat award, after he led a Scout Ranger team to battle 150 Abu Sayyaf rebels in 1996. Sobihana succeeds General Gilbert Gapay, who will mandatorily retire on February 4 as he turns 56. We'll go for a quick break when the big story returns. Local meat producers fear the entry of new strains of the African swine fever should the country admit imports with zero tariff. And the PNP's crime lab is reporting rules out rape and homicide in the death of flight attendant Christine Dacera. The details next. Good evening, you're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay. Some top officials have expressed willingness to be the first in line to receive COVID-19 shots in a bid to boost the public's vaccine confidence. But as for the president's decision to receive the jab privately, they say that has to be respected. JC Cosico with this report.
Government officials called anew on the public to not be afraid of vaccination, as the Philippines expects to roll out COVID-19 shots soon. Vaccine czar Carlito Galvez Jr. insists that the jabs will undergo strict procedures before inoculation.
The vaccines to be procured by the national government will undergo the stringent evaluation and selection process of the vaccine expert panel, the Food and Drug Administration, and our DOH.
Galvez and Health Chief Francisco Duque III have expressed willingness to be vaccinated first to improve confidence on the shots. But Duque hopes they will not be blasted for supposed VIP treatment if they do this.
Isa lang po ang amin hangarin para ipakita sa taong bayan na ito po mga bakunang ito na napili at nasuring maigi, siguradong ligtas, dekalidad, epektibo.
Talaga magpapakuna po kami kung ano po yung mauna at yun po ang maaproban ng ating vaccine expert panel at maaproban po ng EUA ng FDA. Kami po yung magpapakuna kasama.
Duque is also urging the public to respect President Duterte's decision to receive the jabs privately. He also noted that the efficacy of the vaccine will just be the same if injected on the arm or buttocks. Palace spokesman Harry Roque had earlier said the president will require privacy because he will get injected in his behind. But the health chief hopes Duterte will still change his mind.
Hopefully, he might still change his mind because we know that there are some world leaders who have openly had themselves vaccinated in public.
Meanwhile, Galvez doubted the basis of London-based research and analysis group Economist Intelligence Unit's forecast, which said the country will only be able to inoculate 60 to 70% of its population by early 2023. The vaccine czar says the Philippines will be able to do so by the end of this year or early 2022 depending on vaccine supply.
Ang pinaka-late na delivery is Q1 of 2022. I believe mali yung basis ng economist dahil yung ating procurement ang timeline po niyan ang main delivery is Q3 and Q4 and also kung just in case magkaroon ng delay Q1 of 2022.
Around 1 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines from Pfizer, AstraZeneca, and Sinovac are expected to arrive next month. With this, Galvez says a rollout is possible by February. Health workers from highly urbanized areas and with high prevalence of infections will first receive the vaccine. Some LGUs like in Taguig City held a dry run of its inoculation program in its vaccination hub at the Lakeshore Complex. Government officials oversaw registration, screening, counseling, vaccination, and post-vaccination procedures.
Pag meron ng reaction, nandyan ho yung gamot, walang problema. Pag emergency ho, may ambulansya, andyan na yung ospital, nakatime ho sa amin gaano kalayo ang ospital.
Around 670,000 of its population of over 1 million are set to receive the shots, with over 700 local health workers expected to administer the jabs in 40 vaccination sites. For News 5, JC Cosico, we are One News.
The Philippines might have to wait 1 to 2 years before herd immunity is achieved. That's according to the Health Department. Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere says keeping the country's health system from collapsing by minimizing cases is the top priority. She's reminding those who have already recovered from the virus to still be vaccinated. Those who may have allergic reactions to a particular vaccine, meanwhile, must be monitored and prescribed with the proper shots. The DOH is also backing Malacanang's explanation for why President Duterte has opted for a private vaccination. They say, yes, in certain special cases, the vaccine may be injected in non-traditional areas.
Kapag ang isang tao po ay hindi pwede, halimbawa yung kanyang deltoid area ay masyado na siyang emaciated, payat na, binibigay natin sa ibang parte ng katawan. Katulad po ng ibang parte na muscular po ang tawag. Pwedeng dun sa anterolateral part of the thigh or pwede rin po sa puwet.
The country is stuck between a rock and a hard place as regards pork supply. Local supply is scarce, but resorting to imported meat spells risk of bringing in not one, but 2 new strains of African swine fever. Shaila Francisco with the details.
2 new strains of African swine fever have been detected in several farms in China. More than 1,000 female pigs owned by New Hope Liaison, China's 4th largest hog producer, have been infected. Citing industry experts, Reuters reports that illicit vaccines may have started the infections. It does not kill pigs, but causes mild infections, which reduces fertility.
Pagka yung variant mo ay ang epekto niya ay mild disease, magtatamlay lang siya, lalagnatin siya. Ako kahirap na nakahirap na sakit niya, no? Kasi marami sakit na ganyan ang diagnosis niya, manifestation niya. So mahirap yung management, ano?
This only reinforced the hog producers' opposition to proposals imposing zero tariff on pork imports. Producers say this will lead to more imports, increasing chances of ASF entering the country.
Bakit tayo merong malaking problema ngayon? Dahil sa importation, wala tayo nung tinatawag na first border inspection facilities.
Samahang Industriya ng Agrikultura or SINAG questions whether imposing zero tariff could impact retail prices. SINAG says it's the importers and traders who jack up prices. The Bureau of Animal Industry also takes note of the international market's pricey meats. While it does not discourage importation due to lack of supply, SINAG wants government to intensify testing of imported meat. The group warns the ASF virus can last 300 days on frozen meat. The BAI says it has already banned pork imports coming from China. It's also on heightened alert for processed items hand-carried by tourists from ports. As regards pig vaccines, the BAI is already in talks with 5 countries for field trials. That's in light of the illicit vaccines that have reportedly caused the new strains. But it warns it may take a long while.
Sila tinitignan po natin kung sino po yung merong best offer para po sa atin at meron po tayong technical working group na mag-evaluate po niyan para ipapasukin natin ay walang complications na mangyayari, no?
For now, the Agriculture Department has allocated 80 million pesos for ASF test kits, which may be used on fresh and processed meat. Mass production will start next month. But while vaccines and ASF test kits are yet to be ready, the country will have to cope with the pig disease's blowback.
The recovery cannot happen within 5 years. If Spain, being an EU country, needed 30 years, we will take much longer than that.
Meat Importers and Traders Association President Jess Chamfer warns there will still be pork deficit in the coming years. Shaila Francisco, we are One News.
And these are the other big stories tonight. A medical legal report shows that 23-year-old flight attendant Christine Dacera died of natural causes. In a copy obtained by News 5 from the camp of Claire de la Fuente, the report shows that Dacera died of ruptured aortic aneurysm triggered by undiagnosed hypertension. The PNP Crime Laboratory has ruled out homicide as well as the possibility of alcohol and substance abuse. The Dacera family maintains that Christine was raped and drugged before she died. Liquidated is different from audited. This is Senator Ping Lacson's response to PhilHealth Chief Dante Giran's claim that 92% of the missing 15 billion pesos in funds have been liquidated. Lacson says public funds may be declared liquidated, but it does not mean funds have been legally disbursed. Foreign Affairs Secretary Teodoro Locsin says the Philippines has lodged a diplomatic protest against a new China Coast Guard law. In his tweet, Locsin says that while enacting a law is China's sovereign prerogative, the new measure could be a, quote, a verbal threat of war to any country, as territorial disputes in the South China Sea are still unresolved. China's new law authorizes its Coast Guard to fire at foreign vessels they deem as threats. The Philippine Business for Social Progress and its chairman, Manny V. Pangilinan, says the private sector may purchase up to 10 million Moderna vaccines, although details are not yet final. As the group celebrates its 50th year, Pangilinan said in an interview with One News The Chiefs Tuesday that they are looking into helping the government procure and deploy COVID-19 vaccines.
Sometimes the urgent gains over what's important, no? And in the last board meeting of PBSP, sometime last week, the focus was on how we can help out on the vaccine front, no? Because that's an area, obviously, that I think the country needs a bit of help.
We'll go for a quick break. When the big story returns. One of the framers of the 1987 Constitution fears amending economic provisions will only be a worse money-making scheme than the pork barrel. And a Filipino-American has just been appointed to a key White House post. Find out who he is later. Good evening, you're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay. Cha-cha for money-making schemes? That is what one constitution framer thinks will happen once legislators successfully tinker with the 1987 Charter. Why is that? Marian Enriquez explains.
It was the Senate's turn to tackle charter change today. The Senate Committee on Constitutional Amendments and Economic Affairs wants to determine whether amendments are needed in the time of the pandemic and its blow to the economy. A framer of the 1987 Constitution believes it's unnecessary. Attorney Christian Munsod says the push for cha-cha, similar to previous attempts, is for self-serving means.
The real motive is profit. RBA 2, page 2 is dangerous and devious because it's a wholesale transfer of power from the Constitution to the Congress on determining the limitations of foreign ownership of land, natural resources, public utilities, media, advertising, educational institutions.
According to Munsod, adding the phrase unless otherwise provided by law renders constitutional provisions meaningless and opens the door wider to corruption.
RBH2 is a new and bigger source of illicit money than the pork barrel. Look at it this way. Once the insidious insertion is accomplished, our legislators can go to rich foreign land developers or mining companies and ask, by how much do you wish to increase your ownership of land?
Monsod says amending the charter won't likely boost foreign direct investments. The country's FDI bucked a global downturn, rising by almost a third in 2020, according to preliminary estimates. The United Nations Conference on Trade and Development says FDI inflows climbed 29% to $6.4 billion last year from $5 billion in 2019. Former Supreme Court Associate Justice Vicente Mendoza also says that a constitutional body, whether a CONCON or CONAS, attains a life of its own, meaning it may veer away from plans of just amending economic provisions.
The possibility of a runaway CONCON or CONAS for that matter is always there, especially at a time like this when it is only 15 months away from the next election.
Senator Richard Gordon believes it's wrong timing to push Chacha.
I'm not in favor of amending the Constitution at this time, principally because we need to focus on many things that we need to do. Not just the pandemic, we can handle the pandemic and amend the Constitution, but if you like, it will be very divisive, or it could be lead to other things.
One Constitution framer, however, supports charter change, but stressed the need for cautiously enacting amendments.
It is very important when you tinker with the Constitution to tinker knowledgeably, Mr. Chairman, and to know where to put this very important provision unless otherwise provided by law.
The Senate panel is set to convene again to tackle procedural aspects of amending the charter. For News 5, Marian Enriquez, we are One News.
Now time for the big stories in sports. A look at the game with Laura Lehman.
Thanks, Robbie. Samahang Basketball ng Pilipinas President Al Panlilio says it's business as usual for Gilas Pilipinas following the cancellation of the country's hosting of the FIBA Asia Cup qualifiers in February. Panlilio adds that the SBP is still looking forward to welcoming FIBA basketball to our shores very soon.
Of course, the February window might still happen. So we're still waiting for FIBA maybe in the next few days, if not this week, to give us a indication of what's going to happen. But I guess more importantly, if you really take a look at this is really a longer term program. I mean, we're really looking at the World Cup in 2023. So this is part of the journey that we have embarked on, where we want to develop young players and hopefully together with veterans from the PBA to create a core team that can really be competitive in 2023. So this is not just practicing for the window, but really looking at 2023 as the end goal for us to be able to compete in that World Cup, which we are hosting.
And that's it for the latest in the world of sports. Catch us on later at 9:30 p.m. on One News and One Sports Plus. My name is Laura Lehman, and this has been The Game.
Thanks, Laura. U.S. President Joe Biden on Monday made several appointments, including a Filipino-American, 31-year-old Jason Tenco, was appointed White House liaison for the Office of Personnel Management. His office acts as the Chief Human Resources Agency of the U.S. government. According to the U.S. OPM website, Tenco served as Chief of Staff for the Biden-Harris campaign's Coalitions Department. He was also the Asian American and Pacific Islander outreach lead on the transition team. Have you ever wanted to get paid for doing nothing? Well, this 37-year-old man from Japan is living his dream, probably yours. Former writer and editor Shoji Morimoto from Tokyo is now making a living by renting himself out to do, well, nothing. Morimoto started offering his services back in 2018, branding himself on Twitter as someone who can only eat, drink, and give simple feedback but do nothing more. Close quote. Since then, Morimoto has had around 3,000 clients and counting. Among the requests he got include walking with a client in silence, accompanying a person who's getting a divorce, or simply listening to someone talk about her views on love. Anyone can rent Morimoto for 10,000 yen. That's around 4,600 pesos. And that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250. Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. I'm Robbie Alampay. We are One News. Good evening.